My sister stole a military phone. I had to report her. Family and loyalty used to mean everything to me. That's what I thought, at least, until I realized loyalty in my family was just a one-way street. I spent 15 years in a classified unit where trust isn't something you hand out like candy. It's survival. Every piece of gear, every device is tracked, encrypted, legally protected. My sister always called me paranoid, said my job had made me cold. Maybe she was right. But when she borrowed my old phone, without asking, none of us knew what that really meant. That phone wasn't just some outdated gadget. It was a prototype, worth millions, tied directly to base intel. So when I saw her text, "It looks nice, thanks," I didn't freak. I didn't even respond. I just smiled, grabbed the secure line, and said, "Initiate recovery protocol." That was the last moment of quiet she ever had. I woke up exactly at 0500 hours to the sound of the alarm. Sharp, relentless, no room for snoozes or half-hearted struggles to stay in bed. The room was cold and bare, just a metal cot with a thin, scratchy blanket, a lockbox that held my gear, and a small sink in the corner. No windows, just sterile white walls and that faint hum of the ventilation system reminding me I wasn't anywhere homey. I sat up, eyes adjusting to the harsh fluorescent light overhead, and instantly went through the checklist in my head. Uniform, clean and pressed from the night before. Boots, already polished. Comms gear, charged and on the table. My fingers moved quickly, reflexive. It was muscle memory by now. No one here waited for you to get ready. Everything had to be precise, efficient, perfect. There wasn't room for feeling. I pulled on my standard-issue tactical vest, slotting in spare batteries and encrypted drives with quiet confidence. When I worked tech in this place, every gadget mattered. Every piece of data was a potential asset, or a liability, if you messed up. And mistakes didn't just slow operations. They could get people killed. The weight of that hung on me all the time, even in moments like this when it was just the cold morning and the silence of the base. The hallway outside was already coming alive with the sound of boots and low murmurs. My immediate team was on rotation, all of us moving like cogs in a precise machine. We weren't a squad anyone messed around with. I locked up my gear, double-checked my personal weapon, and stepped into the corridor, matching the steady rhythm of the others. I kept my head down, eyes scanning the LED panels that displayed status updates on every system we monitored. In here, it was data first. Intel, transmissions, security logs, and I was the guy making sense of it all. If anything went wrong with comms or the surveillance network, they called me. That's where the pressure pressed down hardest. Out there, people could improvise. In here, that was a luxury we didn't have. I walked past the command room and caught a glimpse of the officers in their usual pre-mission briefing. Stern faces, clipped orders. Sometimes I couldn't help but feel like a ghost within that storm. I was responsible for the invisible veins that kept us all connected, but I wasn't the one making the big decisions. I was the guy who had to make sure the right signals went out at the right time or else. I ended up at my station, a wall of screens lighting up as I logged in with a biometric scan. The familiar rush of data flooding unsettled me. Communication lines from drones, encrypted chatter from the field, live feeds from combat units. All unfiltered facts and numbers. But it felt like carrying a secret weight, holding something that nobody else saw, but that could change everything in a second. This job was about control, but deep down I knew control was a fragile illusion. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, checking for anomalies, scanning for threats, or anything out of the ordinary. That's when the first frozen screen caught my eye. A routine glitch, maybe, but could be something worse. I frowned, heart starting to pick up pace. Not with fear, but that familiar alertness that something was about to break. I troubled myself to hope it was nothing. Then there it was, the code I wasn't supposed to see, a message buried deep in the signal traffic, something encrypted and out of place. I stared at it, mind spinning. This wasn't standard. Not the kind of thing we got during drills or routine checks. It was a red flag blinking in my gut. I should have closed it, logged it as a bug, moved on. Instead, I copied it, the weight of what I might be uncovering settling cold on my chest. In my world, mistakes don't get second chances, they get sealed reports. But sharing that message? That was a risk. The kind of risk nobody talked about before something goes sideways. I kept wrestling with it, fingers trembling just a bit. Because right then, I felt the control slipping, the cracks starting to form in my perfect routine. And for maybe the first time in a long while, I realized I wasn't ready for what was coming next. I remember those nights with her, before everything went sideways. She wasn't the quiet type, more like a storm that rattled the windows and refused to calm down. She'd have this grin, like she knew exactly what she was doing was wrong, but did it anyway just to see what would happen. She lived like rules were dares waiting to be broken. And somehow, I was always the unlucky one around to witness it. It drove me crazy, honestly. She'd sneak out late at night, steal my stuff, leave the house a mess. I'd catch her once and she just shrugged, like, relax, it's just stuff. At the time, it felt like she wanted me to care less, to loosen up, but I couldn't. I was too wrapped up in the military stuff, training all day, and then trying to figure out what I could say around people and what I couldn't. It wasn't just discipline, it was survival. Somehow, she hated that more than anything. I don't get why you're like this, she said one night after I told her to stop messing around with my gear. We were sitting in the dark, only the faint glow from the street lamp outside lighting her face. You're so dead inside. You're just going through the motions, like a damn robot. Does the military screw you up that bad? I wanted to tell her she had no idea what I was dealing with. That there were things I couldn't say, people I couldn't trust, the weight of choices I already had to make before breakfast. But instead, I just looked away quiet. She didn't need to know how dark it really was for me. She always thought I was cold, distant. Maybe I was. Maybe I didn't even want to be around her sometimes because being near all that reckless energy only made my chest tighten. I saw how her eyes flashed with something I called anger, but maybe it was fear too. She hated not knowing me, hated how I guarded myself like I'd been trained to keep secrets even from my own blood. But sometimes, when she wasn't pushing buttons, she'd let me in for a second. Like the time we snuck out to that abandoned park after midnight. It was all busted swings and graffiti, the kind of place that smelled like rust and old rain. We were quieter than usual. She told me about some plans she had, somewhere nobody would expect her. A fresh start maybe, but she couldn't say where exactly. I didn't ask. I was just glad she'd let me in at all. That night, the way she leaned her head on my shoulder felt different. Like she wasn't just the wild sister I was supposed to keep tabs on, but someone who needed me to see beneath the surface too. I wanted to hold on to that moment, before things got messy, before the cracks spread too wide. But even then, a part of me knew it was temporary. She always challenged me, but not just for the hell of it. There was something more in it, a desperate need to wake me up, or maybe break through the barriers I built. I wanted to be honest with her, to tell her why I never opened up. But every time I tried, the words got stuck in my throat, tangled in all the things I was supposed to protect and the silence I was taught to keep. One night, she yelled at me, said I was emotionally dead, that I didn't even care if she was drowning right in front of me. Her voice cracked when she said it, like she was half mad and half begging. That hit harder than anything. I wanted to argue, to say that's not true, but I couldn't. Because on some level, maybe she was right. Maybe I had already checked out in pieces I never admitted. I think that's when things started to slide between us. There were these long silences after, things said and left unsaid. She kept trying to pull me out, and I just kept fading. It was like watching us both drowning, but neither of us wanting to reach. Looking back now, I hate that I didn't fight harder to keep that part of us alive. I pretended I was fine with how things were unraveling, but maybe part of me was just afraid to see what the truth would break. She wasn't just being reckless. She was hurting, and I was too wrapped up in my own pain to catch her. The last time I saw her before everything turned, I tried to say something real. I messed up the words, but I meant it. I told her I wanted to be there, that I wasn't as dead inside as she thought. She gave me this strange look, like she believed me for a second, then shook her head. Maybe it's too late for that, she said. And then she walked away, without looking back. I thought I could fix it, but I was wrong. And that's the part one keep coming back to. The moment we could have stopped the falling apart, if only I'd known how to stay. When I got home that day, I didn't hurry. I had some hours before I had to report back, but I carried that box with me like it was a bomb. It was a small prototype device from work, stuff that I wasn't really supposed to bring outside the base. But they gave me no choice. I was on short leave, and the only place I could stash it safely, away from prying eyes, was in my own place. So I did what I thought was right. I sat down at the kitchen table, the box heavy in my hands. I could feel the cold metal through the cardboard. I should have just left it at base, where it belonged. But you don't expect family to breach protocol. You don't imagine they'd disrespect the things you're trusted with, no matter how little they understand. I locked it in the drawer of the old desk in the corner of the living room. The drawer wasn't fancy, scratched and dented from years of careless use, but it had a built-in lock. I made sure it clicked shut before I rested my hand on it for a second. I had to log it, specify the serial number, date, time. I recorded every single detail on my encrypted device later that night before calling it in. This was mine. Mine to protect. Mine to keep safe. But even as I double-checked everything, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling creeping in the back of my mind. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the dull ticking of the wall clock. I kept telling myself, it's secure. It's locked. There's no reason for worry. But the way the lock felt, just a little loose in my hand, something about it nagged at me. I thought about leaving it somewhere else, safer, at work, but it wasn't an option this time. The leave was too short. Plus, I had this weird hope in the back of my head that nothing would happen while I was gone. That the people I lived with respected me enough to leave it alone. When I locked that drawer, my chest was tight, like I was holding in a breath I hadn't realized I was taking. I found myself running through the possible what-ifs over and over, the same stifling loop that didn't want to let go. What if someone found it? What if it went missing? The consequences would be on me. No one else. I'd be the one explaining myself. I had to keep that device safe. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't just about the device. It was about trust. Trust that wasn't guaranteed here. I sat back and stared at that desk for a long time after locking the drawer. It felt like the quiet before a storm I didn't know how to stop. I wondered if I should have just told my family, warned them about how important this thing was. But part of me didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I wanted this normal visit to feel normal, nothing complicated. Maybe I was trying to protect myself, keep things simple, but really, I was avoiding the conversation I needed to have. The routine of unpacking my bag, changing clothes, grabbing a drink, it all moved like slow motion. Every sound in the house suddenly felt sharper. The creak of the floorboard, the faint rustle of curtains in a draft, even distant laughter on the street outside. I could feel the weight of the drawer's lock pulsing quietly in the back of my mind like a warning I refused to listen to. That night, I lay awake thinking of all the ways this could go wrong. How no matter how tightly I held on, I wasn't the only one with access. I should have been more careful, should have been more suspicious. I still thought it was safe, but I kept turning over the same fear, that even locked away, even logged and accounted for, the device wasn't really out of reach. And by the time I finally drifted off, the last thing on my mind was the sound of that drawer opening. Soft, almost careful, but not nearly as safe as I believed it to be. I was sprawled on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through my phone when the notification popped up. It was from my sister. Just a simple text, borrowed your old phone. Taking it on my date, grinning face with smiling eyes. I read it twice. Not because I didn't get it the first time, but because I couldn't believe how calm I still was. It felt like this bizarre moment where time slowed down, and the words didn't hit like I thought they would. She never asked. Not once. She just took it. My stomach twisted tight. That phone wasn't just some old gadget. It held everything. The texts, the pictures, the things I thought I deleted, but couldn't really erase. Even after all the crap I'd been through, after everything I'd tried to lock away, there it was, sitting in her hands like some casual accessory for a date. I put the phone down, stared at the ceiling. There was this undercurrent of quiet fury rising slow but steady, a heat that didn't scream but burned sharp underneath my skin. How could she be so careless? So blithe about it? She didn't know what was on there, didn't realize the kind of shit she was ignoring. I wanted to text back, tell her to forget it, but the words stuck in my throat. If I pushed, I'd look weak. I couldn't let her see that. And yet, this insane part of me felt numb. Like my brain was trying to stay detached, like the fact she'd taken the phone was just a fact, something to process later. I glanced at the clock. Way too early for her to be back from her date. This wasn't just the start of a shitty weekend. It felt like the moment before the storm. The calm that makes you dread what's coming next. I texted back something stupid casual. Okay, have fun. That lie, pretending this was no big deal, tasted bitter in my mouth. But I needed to keep it together, or I'd lose myself. The weirdest part? I wanted to call her, to suddenly bend and beg her not to touch anything, not to look at anything. But I didn't. Maybe I thought that by staying quiet, by pretending I was okay, I could somehow contain the mess I'd been trying to bury. The phone buzzed again. It was a selfie from her, smile lighting up her face, with that stupid little grin I hated so much when it looked like everything was fine. I stared at it, feeling this eerie calm wash over me, cooler than before, like my brain was shutting down parts of itself. That old phone. It was a trap waiting to spring, and I knew she didn't even see it. I thought about going to her place, taking it away, but something held me back. I wasn't sure if I was protecting her or myself. Maybe a piece of me didn't want to drag this nightmare into the open just yet. I sank deeper into the couch, heart pounding but strangely steady, waiting for the moment when everything would break loose. The silence after that message wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that knows it's before the screaming begins. And I realized I had no idea how to stop it this time. The moment I held the device in my hand, the weight of it felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't just some gadget. It was classified tech, the kind of thing that could ruin everything if it got into the wrong hands. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my phone and dialed base security. My voice was steady, cool, even when inside I was falling apart. This is Lieutenant Harris. Unauthorized removal of classified technology detected. Request immediate lockdown protocol. I kept the words clipped, professional. No room for panic, no room for doubt. I couldn't let myself feel anything but control. There was a pause on the other end. Then, a calm, clipped voice responded. Copy, Lieutenant. Initiating lockdown. All personnel, lockdown Sector 7. Initiate sweep for missing tech. Command authorization required. I watched as everything started to move into place. The base, usually loud and chaotic with voices and footsteps between shifts, fell eerily silent. My fingers twitched, but I didn't reach out to anything or anyone. I just stared at the device in my palm and the faint blinking light on my phone, waiting for the next order. Encrypted calls started coming in from higher-ups. Their voices were sharp, clipped, the kind you hear only in crisis. No emotion, just strategy and calculations. They queried, confirmed details, weighed options. I knew exactly what was happening behind those calls. Command was deciding how far they wanted to go, to protect the operation, to cover their tracks, to keep secrets locked down. I closed my eyes briefly and remembered what I was risking. Family was personal. Protocol wasn't, and I chose protocol. Because if I didn't, everything I'd worked for, everything I believed in, could vanish in a second. Part of me felt hollow knowing it would cost more than just equipment. But I pushed that feeling down, buried under my training and oath. The room around me was cold, sterile, the kind of place that made you feel small and exposed. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, steady and unyielding. I could hear distant footsteps now. The team mobilized quietly, like shadows moving through halls, silent but deadly efficient. No questions, no blame, just orders executed without hesitation. I tapped a quick message to command. Operation integrity at risk. Suspect identified. Awaiting further instructions. Then I froze. I thought about everything I'd just set in motion. If this leaked, it could spiral out of control so fast. But if I didn't act, I'd be complicit. A sharp knock on the door broke my focus. It was the security officer in charge, a woman I'd never fully trusted but respected for her calm in moments like this. She looked at me, waiting for an update, for guidance. I swallowed, the lump in my throat growing heavier. This isn't just about stolen tech, I heard myself say with a barely audible breath. It's about who we are and what we're willing to lose. I realized then I wasn't just reporting theft. I was admitting to a fracture inside myself, between duty and doubt. She nodded slowly, didn't ask questions. The silence between us was loud, heavy. I could almost feel the weight pressing on my chest, pressing me to make a choice. Not just as a soldier, but as a person. And I wasn't sure if I'd made the right one. The order came in again to secure the area, and I watched as teams fanned out, going deeper into the base, shadows moving with precision. I stayed where I was, still holding the device, still hearing the hum of the lights, still feeling the numb clash of what protocol demanded and what my gut screamed at me. I wanted it to be over. I wanted some part of me to believe that keeping this professional distance was enough. But as the silence stretched, I knew it wasn't. The damage wasn't just in the missing tech. It was already inside me, and there was no going back from that. We were halfway through our meal when the door swung open, almost like it was on a hinge no one noticed until that second. At first, I thought it was just more customers, But then a couple of guys in military police uniforms slipped inside, without making a sound louder than a whisper. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but the way the whole room shifted like we were some sort of animals in a cage hit me before I even looked up. Then I saw her. My sister. She was sitting there, laughing with that guy she showed up with, like everything was normal. But the second those MPs locked eyes on her, the air changed. She stiffened, her smile fading like a TV screen, losing signal. The guy with her looked around, confused, maybe even amused, like this was some prank or a joke he didn't get yet. One of the MPs walked straight over to their table without a word and pulled out this little metal device from the guy's pocket. A quick glance at it, and I could see his face drain color. The whole restaurant froze, the clinking of silverware stopping, conversations disappearing. People started whispering right away, some with fear, others with curiosity laced enough to make you sick. She laughed, just like always, like there was nothing to worry about, like they were on some hidden camera show. And then the sergeant cleared his throat, staring down at her while reading the rights she didn't expect to hear, as if she was just some civilian caught in the streets, not his own sister. Her laugh died instantly. She looked around, finally realizing this wasn't a joke. The way her eyes flickered to mine, half anger, half regret, made my chest tighten. I wanted to say something, but my voice caught in my throat. I was sitting there, watching this unfold like it was a nightmare too surreal to wake from. The guy with her was frozen. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I caught the disappointment flashing in his eyes, like he'd just been branded by association. People started pulling out phones, some whispering curses, others snapping photos or videos. The MPs didn't care. They clipped some plastic cuffs onto her wrists right there, cutting through the noise like a guillotine. Everyone who had been jovial seconds ago now looked like they were watching a disaster unfold. I wanted to yell at them to stop, tell them to think about what they were doing, but it was out of my control. Out of all of ours. The sergeant's voice was cold, precise, almost surgical. You are under arrest. Her shoulders slumped a second after the cuffs clicked into place, like she was only then truly realizing what this meant. The bravado was gone, and all that was left was this broken, small version of the sister I knew. She looked over at me, eyes wide and pleading. That was the moment I hated the most. Not for what she did, but for how she looked at me, like I might save her or fix it somehow. I wanted to believe this could still be undone, that we could laugh it off, like before all this started. But the room was silent except for the soft shuffle of her footsteps as they led her out. The hum of murmurs rose again, but they felt distant, like noise from another world. I thought it was over, but the weight in my chest told me this was only the beginning. They called me into the debriefing room early the next morning, the kind of place that's so sterile and cold it might as well be a morgue. I walked in, and my superior was there waiting, calm, but with that hard-set look that tells you you're already on trial. No smiles. No small talk. Lieutenant, he said, your actions stopped a breach today. We appreciate that. His voice was clipped, professional. But then he leaned forward, and his eyes got serious. That said, you need to understand something very clearly. What you did will be treated as espionage, period. No exceptions. Even family ties don't change that. Hearing him say it out loud, it hit me harder than I thought it would. I took a breath, trying to steel myself, but my chest felt like it was tightening. Loyalty to your country means watching your blood freeze in a holding cell, he said, without saying it directly. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I blinked, waiting for him to explain more, but he just stared, waiting. I realized that there was no room for excuse or argument here. The job, the agency, it doesn't give a damn about personal reasons, only results and rules. My family connection, everything I'd hoped would grant some leniency, meant nothing now. I started. What was I supposed to say? That I'd torn myself apart trying to do the right thing? That I wanted to protect my family, but not at the cost of everything else? The line between patriot and traitor felt thinner than ever. My superior interrupted the silence. You need to prepare yourself, he said quietly. Procedures will begin soon. You'll be isolated during the investigation. Keep your head down. Answer questions truthfully. That's all anyone expects. Isolated. The word echoed in my mind. I tried to picture it, being locked in a room, watched, questioned, dissected, while my own thoughts turned against me. I'd always assumed I'd be a hero, someone who did the right thing and came out stronger. Now it was more like waiting for the hammer to fall. Do you understand? He asked. I nodded. Yes. There was no warmth at the end of that nod, just a cold acceptance. I didn't even know if I hated myself or the system more. Maybe both. As I left the room, the door slammed behind me louder than expected. I paused in the hallway, looking at the thin sliver of light creeping under the door I'd just come through. That light suddenly felt like a lie, like hope was something I was supposed to forget. Walking out of the building felt strange. The world outside was still moving, a normal day outside that cold box. People chatting, traffic, the sun casting shadows on the pavement. But I felt completely cut off. Hollow, like I was already being erased before anything official even started. I kept thinking about what he said, no exceptions. Not for anyone, even family. And the way that made my stomach twist, because I had spent so long believing I could protect them. Now, it was like all the walls I'd built were crumbling, and I was trapped behind glass, staring out at nothing. I told myself to breathe. Focus. There was still a job to do. But the knot in my throat wouldn't let me forget how alone I already felt. When I got in my car, I noticed my phone had 3 missed calls from my sister. I didn't call her back. Not yet. Because I wasn't sure if I could bring myself to lie to her, or if I even wanted to. The whole thing hit me suddenly. I was going to have to choose what mattered more, my duty, or the family I was supposed to protect. And maybe I already knew the answer wasn't going to be any easier than walking into that debriefing room this morning. I stared at my reflection in the windshield, feeling like a ghost of the person I used to be, waiting for the next move that might erase me completely. I keep seeing those moments, like old movies stuck in my head. There was this one time when we were maybe 8 or 9. I remember sitting on the floor, tears streaming down because I couldn't find my favorite toy car. She was there, holding it behind her back, grinning like she knew she was in trouble. And I just wanted to be mad, but she ran up to me and whispered, "I'm sorry," like it was a secret we had. I ended up sharing all my toys with her anyway. I don't know why. She used to steal my toys. I used to forgive her. Back then, she wasn't just my little sister. She was like my shadow on bad days. Like when the bullies started at school, it was her who ran to get the teacher, dragging me out before things got ugly. When I'd mess up at home or forget to do something, she'd cover for me without asking why or making a big deal. We were a mess, honestly. But somehow, we were messes that stuck together. She was this tiny force acting like my protector. I remember that afternoon when Mom was sick and the house went cold. She sat with me in the kitchen, even though we both stayed silent half the time. She held my hand like she was letting me know, "You won't be alone." I was the one supposed to look out for her. We were kids, but I felt like it was my job. I thought I was strong enough to protect her from whatever came next. But now, thinking about it, I realize this time, I can't. I can't fix this. Not with anger, not with being stubborn, not even with crying late into the night. I kept replaying everything, like if I found the right solution, maybe I could clean up this mess like I always did before. But this isn't like the times I got in trouble at school or when she'd sneak into my room. There was the time when she came to me crying because she'd broken the window and swore she'd tell Mom if I promised not to freak out on her. I stayed calm, told her we'd figure it out together, and somehow we patched it up. I was the one who covered for her then. But this mess, it feels like she stole more than my trust. I don't know how to put it back together. She stole my life. The hardest part is that I'm not just angry anymore. I'm broken in a way I wasn't before. I still want to yell, but the sound sticks in my throat because deep down I'm scared. The fear of losing her, of what I've already lost. I feel like I should be holding it all together, but right now, it's like I'm the one falling apart. I'm supposed to be the rock, but I'm crumbling. I saw her face the other day. Not the mischievous kid who'd slap me and then hug me so tight I'd forget what I was mad about. It was empty, like she's trapped somewhere I can't reach. And part of me wants to fix that. God, I want to fix that. But even I'm starting to understand some things aren't fixable. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe I should have stopped pretending I could catch every problem before it hit us. But I wanted to believe it was just like before, that no matter what she did, no matter how bad things got, I could still save us both. Now, it doesn't feel that way anymore. I let the anger fade because it's too heavy, but the sorrow doesn't leave. It wants to settle in, grow, remind me that this isn't a game or some childhood mistake. It's real, and it's here. I'm here, and she's out there somewhere, making choices I can't undo. I thought I could always protect her from falling too far. Now I wonder if I ever really could. I close my eyes, and the memories blur. Her laughter, our fights, the quiet moments we shared. I want to scream at her to come back or at myself for letting go, but all I can do is hold on to those pieces, shaky as they are. Because for the first time, I'm realizing some messes don't get cleaned up. They just stay, growing until you learn how to live with them or they swallow you whole. And right now, I have no idea which way this is going to go. When I walked into the visiting room, she was sitting there like a ghost. Her hands were shaking, her hair a mess, eyes red and swollen. She looked up when I sat across the table, but didn't say anything at first. Just stared like she was trying to recognize me, or maybe convince herself this wasn't real. I hated that look, like she was trying to crawl out of it, but stuck deep inside something frozen. She started crying quietly, not the loud sobbing you'd expect, but the kind that rattles inside your chest, breaking you without noise. "Please," she whispered, the word barely there. "Please just fix it." I didn't answer. I wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt right. My mouth felt dry, like everything I wanted to say was glued to the back of my throat. I could feel her hoping, waiting for a miracle I couldn't give. She wiped her face with the back of her hands and looked at me with those haunted eyes. "You have to fix this. You're the only one who can. It's not too late." I didn't move. Just sat there, not defending, not comforting. I hated myself in that moment. Hated how cold I felt. But I couldn't force words out, not real ones. Not after everything. I thought about yelling, snapping, telling her to wake up. But what good would that do? She already knew. She already saw the damage. Her silence would have been easier to bear. This pleading felt like knives twisting inside. She lowered her head onto the table, her breath shaky, and whispered again, "You have to fix it." Like a mantra, like if she said it enough, maybe the world would spin back the right way. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, that I wished I'd stopped it before it got this far. But the truth is, I wasn't sure how much I wanted to fix what was already shattered. Part of me had already started walking away in my head. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I was afraid. I looked down at my hands. They weren't steady either. Finally, I said quietly, "You should have asked." She looked up, confusion flashing across her face like a brief lightning strike. Her breath caught. Then she cried again, but it was a different sound, like she'd just been slapped with reality. Not the comforting kind. I didn't mean. You should have asked." I repeated, harder this time. "Before you did what you did. Before all this." My voice cracked a little, but I forced it out. "I didn't salute you. I just said that because you should have known. Maybe I should have made it clear sooner." The room was suddenly colder. She looked away, biting her lip like she was trying to hold back some truth or pain. I didn't wait for her reaction, because I already knew what was coming next. The guilt, the shock settling deeper in, the realization that neither of us could undo what had happened. She sobbed quietly again, but this time without words. Just the slow, painful unraveling of someone who saw herself go too far, too late. I wanted to reach out, to take her hands, to say it wasn't all on her. But I stayed frozen. Because maybe it was. Or maybe I was just too tired to fight this fight anymore. She looked up at me one last time. "Please, please don't leave me like this." I wanted to tell her I wouldn't. But as I got up to leave, the silence between us screamed louder than any words could. I thought it was over. But the heaviness in the air told me this was only the beginning of something worse. I sat there staring at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard like I was about to type some big proclamation. Instead, I just stared. The device was logged. Serial number, location found, condition, all entered perfectly, neat as they trained us to do. I hit submit on the final report, and the screen blinked back at me, confirmation it was received. That was it. Everything we'd been chasing, that nightmare of a mission, boiled down to a report in a military database. My hands trembled, but I didn't wipe them. It was like I owed it, to that thing, to myself, to keep the truth raw. The room felt too quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed in the background, sterile and indifferent. I stood up and shoved the chair in too hard against the desk. The sound echoed louder than I expected, like it was filling the space where my thoughts scattered. Outside, I heard rain tapping against the windows. I walked over slow, careful. The rain was steady but soft, the kind that doesn't rush but keeps coming until you don't know how long you've been soaked. I pushed the door open, stepping out into the gray drizzle. Each drop chilled me, but I didn't move for a second, just looked up against the dull sky. People walked past, heads down, faces blurred by the rain and the highway noise. They didn't see me, not really. I thought about how it used to be simpler, fighting for survival, having clear lines drawn between right and wrong. But this wasn't that. This was sacrifice disguised as victory. No man left behind. That's what we're told. It's a creed you hold close, like a lifeline, because without it, you'd lose yourself. But out here, family isn't always on your side. Maybe it's the last line I learned, not from training, but from every hard choice I was forced to make when the stakes weren't about medals or missions, but about who gets you back and who doesn't give a damn. I ran my hand down my face and felt the cold wetness, but it wasn't rain. Tiredness, yeah. Regret, something deeper. I thought I'd be furious, broken, screaming at the world. But all I felt was this quiet. Not peace exactly, more like the way the world just keeps spinning if you fall off it. You don't get to stop because the pain's too much. I pulled the collar of my jacket up and started walking. The rain soaked through, but I didn't care. Every step forward was like saying, this is done. I'd answered every question I could, played every card I held, and I thought about what that meant. Loyalty isn't always about love. Sometimes it's just duty, and that makes it hollow in its own way, but no less real. I passed a street lamp that flickered on, orange leaking through the gray. The light caught the side of my face and I saw it. No anger, no relief, just loss. A kind of emptiness that sits heavy in your chest and never quite lets go. I wished I could say I regretted the choices, but I didn't. I just wish things had been different. Maybe I should have walked away sooner or asked for help. I don't know. But once you're in that line of fire, there's no rewinding the tape. You just live with the shadows it leaves behind. The rain picked up, harder now, smearing the world into an endless blur. I looked down at the device tucked safe in my bag and thought about everything it cost me. Not the weight I carried on my shoulders, but the weight I left behind. I kept walking. The bass faded behind me, swallowed by the storm. I thought it was over. But the silence that followed said otherwise.